So now we've gone through all of the animation properties that you can use with CSS, but I wanted to step back and talk about the @keyframes rule again, and talk about some alternative ways in which you can use the @keyframes rule definition. So far, when we've been using the @keyframes rule, we've been using the keywords of from and to. It is possible to use percent values as well. So instead of using from or to, we could do something like 0% and then make our property transformations. So I'll do a transform and we'll just tell this to scale. I'll change the background color and I'm going to specify that the border radius is at 100%. Then instead of using the to keyword, I'm going to use 100%. And I'm going to make some changes to the properties that I just specified. So we'll scale this up a little bit and we'll change the background color. So if I go ahead and I go onto the element object that I've created on my page and I specify the animation name and I pass in the value of changer, which is the keyframes that I've set up, and I specify an animation duration of 2 seconds, and we save this and we go into the browser, you can see that the animation is going to occur. So it's going to play once through like we would expect it to do. So you can see how 0 and 100% work the same as using from and to. But what's really cool, what you can actually do when you're using the percent values is you can pass in some intermediate percents. So 0% is always going to indicate the beginning of the animation. 100% is going to indicate the end. But you can also pass in some intermediate frames. So if I add something that happens at 50%, and let's say I change the background color here to be a different color, it's going to go to green. Now my animation is going to behave a little bit differently, so I can control exactly what happens here. And let's make something a little bit more obvious. I'm going to add a transform and let's add a scale value and let's have this scale down to 0.1. So it's going to start off at 0.3, it's going to now get smaller, and then it's going to pop up and get big. So you can see how I changed the behavior of the animation by adding in these different percent values. And you can do all sorts of things like this. Like let's say I wanted to alter my object and I wanted it to scale down to 30% and I want the background color to start off being this green color and I want the border radius to be 100% and then I want it to go to this yellow color. Let's move this around a little bit. So at 50%, I'm going to change this to the yellow color and we'll get rid of this transform of 0.1. I'm going to get rid of this whole 100% declaration. And if I save this right now and I play the animation, you're going to see that the animation is just going to do what we would expect it to do. It's going to convert from the original color, which is this kind of teal blue, and at 0% it's going to make it this green, and then at 50% it's going to go to yellow. And then what happens is it just converts back into its original color. But if I put a comma here and I add 100%, it's going to force this to start and end with the small scaling along with the background color of the green and the border radius of 100. So you can see how the behavior is much different. It stays at the circle and really the only thing that looks like it's changing is the color. That's the only thing that we're tweening. The scale, it starts and ends at the 30% size scale. And then of course, because we're not telling it to remain at that 30%, it's going to pop up to its original 200 by 200 pixel size. So as you can see, we have a lot of flexibility in the way that we can create our animations. You might want to do something that's more like this, where I'll get rid of this 50%, and instead of starting at 0%, I'm going to start at 30%. So now if I save this, you can see how the behavior of this is a little bit different. It's going to tween down from its original position of the square down into the circle with the green color with the small scaling, and then at 100% it's going to go back to the yellow and the larger size. So there's a lot more control that you have, by adding the percentages to your keyframes rather than using the keywords.